Donald Trump was saying there, much wider than the issue of Muslims and Islam, is this idea that a wall needs to be built to keep people out, particularly on the southern border. What's your view of that?
Well, it is unnecessary, and I think it is wrong-headed, and it's a form of misdirection. And not unlike the argument that the president makes on the issue of voter fraud, it's based on phony numbers, and grounded, though, in prejudice and fear. In the case of the voter fraud, the idea is that illegals and black people and poor people are flooding to the polls and turning our elections around. In the case of the wall, he made the argument that we have rapists and murderers coming across the border, killing our people. The wall, he said, will save thousands of lives. That simply isn't the case. He can point to some families, and there are some tragic stories. But to select out 6 or 7 tragic murders committed by undocumented people and pretend that that is somehow defines the story of our southern border simply isn't true.
But it's
President Obama and George Bush added thousands of border security agents to the southern border. They built a significant part of the area has a wall where it's actually needed, but and the numbers actually of people who are crossing have dropped significantly in the last 5 years. So he's it's a phony case.
Sure, he's playing to people's fears, but
those
fears are potent. And, you know, the stories of people dying at the hands of people who are immigrants are real. There is a constituency out there for this kind of message. How do people like you combat that?
Well, look, about 60% of the American people do not want to deport people who are here undocumented. So yes, he's reached about 40%. That was about his voter total in terms of the overall adult population. That's what his favorability rating is. And he's got a real hold on that core vote group. But we lost an election because we didn't, I think, pursue as vigorously a counter-argument. And I think that now the case has to be made over the next couple of years to move members of Congress to see how dangerous some of these proposals are. He says that it'll save thousands of jobs and billions of dollars. It's actually going to cost us tens of billions of dollars to build this wall and maintain this wall, and Mexico is not going to pay for it. And so a lot of it is based on a phony case. It's unfortunate, but you're right. There's fear and there's prejudice, and it won an election, and we're dealing with the consequences.
All right. Okay. I mean, you are founder and president of the Arab American Institute. What do you think of his ideas on limiting or making it even more difficult for people from certain African, Middle Eastern countries, including Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and so on, to get into the United States because they come from countries that have been blighted by terrorism?
Well, you know, we're going to see that executive order coming out tomorrow. And I've read it, and I find it very dangerous. Again, it's based on a fraudulent case. He says hundreds and hundreds of people since 9/11 have been arrested who have been immigrants and refugees from those countries. That's simply not true. I deal with this issue on a daily basis with the Homeland Security and with the Department of Justice. I know how many people have been arrested. I know how deep and serious the problem is, and I know that it is not as serious as the president makes it out to be. What it's going to do is it's going to keep literally hundreds of thousands of Syrians who are American citizens from being able to have their families come and visit them. Same with Yemenis, same with Iraqis, and same with Iranian Americans. It's going to break down relationships when we ought to be building up relationships. And it's based, again, on a phony case that these people are a threat to our country. On the issue of refugees, which he is really insistent that we put a hold for 4 months and deny refugees access to America, again, he says until we can get a vetting process in place. The vetting process in place for refugees is the most intense and most onerous of any country in the world. These are not migrants coming into America. These are people who go through a 2-year vetting process. We don't accept people who are a danger to our country, regardless of what he says in his executive order. And I think, again, he's playing on prejudice and fear to make a case that simply is not warranted and is going to hurt America in the eyes of the world. I can imagine the Statue of Liberty is crying right now because the promise of America has been stained.
But isn't it fair, right and proper for a new president to want to look at vetting and visas for people coming in from outside in a time of crisis? And we know we live in an age of international cross-border terror. We know that, for instance, after the Iranian Revolution in '79, Jimmy Carter looked at the situation with Iran and put restrictions on as well. This isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing, really, is it? And surely it's incumbent on a new president to want to get all the facts and to look at things afresh.
With the case of George Bush and Barack Obama, the two presidents that we've had since 9/11, we did not have presidents who painted with a broad stroke Islam and Muslims as a problem, or all Muslim countries as a problem. Yes, there were some excesses in the Bush years, and President Obama made some mistakes. But if you read this executive order that says that we cannot have people come to America who adhere to a religion that is based on, and it goes on to describe in very prejudicial terms what Islam is about, that is wrong. And it is fundamentally an untruth. And I think that this president, like his predecessors, has a responsibility not only to keep America safe, but also to keep America and the image of America bright and shining to the rest of the world. If we come off like a two-bit dictatorship that is going to punish people because they're different, be afraid of people because they worship in a different way than we do, then whatever has been America is lost. And that is something that Donald Trump has to deal with. He's not running a campaign anymore. He's now the head of America. And he's got to represent America and its ideals better than he's doing to date.
Okay. James Zogby, thanks very much indeed for joining us from Washington. Thank you. And we're going to find out how this story and all the others are being covered on tomorrow morning's front pages at 10:40 tonight. My guest on the papers will be The Guardian's chief leader writer, Randeep Ramesh, and Lucy Fisher, senior political correspondent at The Times. So please stay with us for that.